A military chopper gets blown out of the sky above Jalisco, hit by a rocket-propelled grenade. In a heartbeat, 9 servicemen are dead. The architect of that attack is still in the wind, carrying a $15 million price tag on his head while running a kingdom across 28 states. Yet, he is just one of 10. We are tracking the absolute deadliest figures who have plunged Mexico into a nightmare. These warlords constructed billion-dollar dynasties on narcotics, going toe-to-toe with federal powers, and their choices have left a body count in the tens of thousands. Mexico is staring down an unprecedented catastrophe. From 2006 to 2024, over 330,000 murders tied to the drug trade have rattled the nation to its core. In 2024 alone, officials logged 33,241 homicides, clocking a rate of 25.6 for every 100,000 citizens. Driving those grim statistics are 10 individuals with backstories that sound like pure fiction. Before we reveal the most wanted target at number 1, you have to grasp their ascent to power and exactly why they inspire such dread. We begin with the game changer. Guzman Loera, better known as El Chapo, is far more than a smuggler. He is a mythic figure in the underworld, first nabbed in Guatemala back in June of 1993. This guy, standing barely 5'5", showed that stature is irrelevant when you possess the brains and audacity to construct one of the planet's most dominant criminal organizations. Yet, what catapulted him to worldwide notoriety wasn't just his supply chain, it was his spectacular talent for vanishing. On January 19, 2001, El Chapo broke out of the Puente Grande maximum security facility in Jalisco. Rumors swirl about how some claim he was tucked away in a laundry bin. Other theories suggest he simply strolled out wearing a police uniform. The bottom line is he achieved the impossible. Aided by a man named Damaso Lopez, known as El Licenciado, who actually served as the deputy chief of security. For 13 years, El Chapo roamed free, cementing the Sinaloa cartel as the undisputed heavyweight of the Western Hemisphere. His logistical pipelines ran all the way from Colombia to the States, snaking up through Central America and Mexico. Throughout that era, investigations suggest his crew pushed thousands of tons of powder, herb, and synthetic compounds, raking in annual profits exceeding $3 billion. Then, in February 2014, the law finally caught up with him in Mazatlan. They shipped him off to Altiplano, another Supermax facility. And that is when the unthinkable happened. On July 11, 2015, El Chapo vanished again. This time, it was straight out of Hollywood. His crew excavated a mile-long tunnel complete with lights, air ducts, oxygen supplies, and even a modified motorbike mounted on tracks for rapid transit. The passage surfaced right under his cell shower. By the time guards inspected the room, there was nothing but a hole in the concrete and an empty cell. That construction project took over a year. They had engineers, architects, and miners on the payroll. The price tag? Over $50 million. That level of complexity sent a chilling message. The Sinaloa outfit had bottomless pockets and a corruption network that penetrated the highest echelons of the state. Finally, in January 2016, he was pinned down in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, following a brutal firefight. This time around, Mexican officials were done playing games. They extradited him to the U.S., where he was tried and handed a life sentence plus an extra 30 years. Right now, he is rotting in ADX, Florence, Colorado, spending 23 hours a day in solitary. But the saga didn't die with El Chapo's arrest. 4 of his sons grabbed the reins: Ivan Archivaldo, Jesus, Alfredo, Ovidio, and Joaquin Guzman. The streets call them Los Chapitos, the Little Chapos, and they command a faction of the cartel backed by at least 5,000 gunmen. Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar is the eldest and the biggest power player of the bunch. He holds the number 1 spot on the DEA's 10 most wanted list, carrying a bounty of up to $5 million. Even before his father's capture, Ivan was managing the logistics, moving product from South America into Mexico and pushing it across the U.S. border. In October 2019, Ivan was at the heart of one of modern Mexico's darkest chapters when feds tried to grab his brother, Ovidio, in Culiacan. The Chapitos unleashed hell on a scale rarely witnessed. They locked down the city using hit squads, packing grenade launchers, and mounted 50 caliber machine guns. They even took soldiers' families as leverage. With the threat of a mass slaughter ticking up by the minute, the government caved and cut a video loose. It was a humiliating defeat for the state and a stark show of force from Los Chapitos. That event, now dubbed the Culiacanazo, unveiled a nightmare scenario. Los Chapitos proved they could summon an army of hundreds in a heartbeat. They possessed heavy-duty military hardware and the guts to go toe-to-toe with the Mexican government. For hours, Culiacan turned into a literal battlefield. Flaming barricades, street shootouts, and sheer terror gripping the Stan population. Fast forward to January 2023, the feds took another shot at grabbing a video, this time with a massive strike force backed by choppers and hundreds of troops. They got their man, but the price tag was horrific. 10 soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice, and dozens of bystanders were caught in the deadly crossfire. A video was shipped off to the States to face the music for synth drugs and weapons charges, but the Chapitos machine kept grinding on, now under the command of Ivan Archivaldo. Their elite enforcer squads, known as the CDs and JGs, are ranked among the most ruthless and well-geared hit teams in Mexico. They utilize Army-grade spy tech, encrypted comms, and armored monsters that could rival actual tanks. That was the status quo until July 2024, when the game flipped on its head. Ismael El Mayo Zambada was practically a ghost story in the narco world. The co-founder of the Sinaloa Federation alongside El Chapo. This 76-year-old grandfather had never seen the inside of a jail cell. He ran things from the background, dodging the flashiness that doomed other kingpins. Uncle Sam put a $5 million bounty on him, but he was untouchable. For over 50 years, El Mayo built a kingdom on silence and handshakes. While others wanted headlines, he wanted invisibility. He pulled the strings on a deep web of corruption that reeled in cops, generals, judges, and politicians. His motto was simple: better to be the number 2 and free than number 1 and wanted. Then, on July 25, 2024, El Mayo just popped up in custody at a private airfield near El Paso, Texas. No shootout, no raid. He was just there, cuffed next to Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of Chapo's boys. The rumor mill went nuclear. Did he surrender? Did he cut a deal? The reality was way grimmier. Mayo claimed Joaquin tricked him, saying they were meeting to squash some internal beef. Instead, the kid shoved him on a private jet and delivered him on a silver platter to U.S. agents. A backstab that opened the gates of hell. By August 2025, El Mayo Zambada pleaded guilty in a New York courtroom. He confessed that under his watch, Sinaloa moved over 1 million kilos of product, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And he dropped a bombshell even bigger than the drugs. For decades, he'd been lining the pockets of Mexico's top brass police, military commanders, and politicians. He said he entered the game back in 1969 when he was just a 19-year-old kid. 55 years building a dynasty, but his capture triggered a catastrophe. The faction loyal to Mayo, the Mayos, declared total war on the Chapitos. Sinaloa became a slaughterhouse between July 2024 and December 2024. Over 800 dead and 950 vanished. The violence spiked 170% compared to the previous year. The attacks were relentless. Corpses showed up every morning in Culiacan, pinned with messages. Shops locked up before sunset. Schools canceled. Lessons for weeks. Whole families packed up and ran. Sinaloa, a state that knows the trade inside out, had never seen bloodshed like this. And right in the middle of the chaos, a third shark entered the water. A game changer, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. They call him El Mencho. He's the boss of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. Since December 2024, the U.S. has slapped a $15 million reward on his head. That's the biggest price tag ever for a Mexican kingpin, beating out even what they offered for El Chapo. Mencho's tale is about a guy who went from guarding avocado groves in Michoacan to becoming the most hunted man in the hemisphere. Born in Aguililla, Michoacan, he started in the Millennial Cartel back in the 90s, moving marijuana and poppy paste. In 2010, As the Zetas spread west, Mencho formed a paramilitary death squad called Los Mata Zetas. Their PR strategy was genius. They slammed the Zetas for shaking down innocent folks, painting themselves as saviors. They dropped videos claiming they only fought criminals who messed with the public. They won that war. And in 2011, they rebranded into the CJNG. But the moment that truly put Mencho on the map went down May 1st, 2015. The government launched Operation. It all went down in Jalisco. A massive operation was underway to finally box him in, with intel suggesting he was holed up near the town of Tenaya. But as security forces tightened the net, El Mencho's crew hit back with a ferocity that caught everyone off guard. Over in Villa Purificación, CJNG gunmen actually blasted a military helicopter out of the sky using a rocket-propelled grenade. In a heartbeat, 9 soldiers were gone. To ensure their boss made it out, El Mencho's people paralyzed the entire Guadalajara metro area, throwing up blockades across the highways. They torched 39 buses, raided 11 banks, and set 16 gas stations ablaze. The chaos swallowed up 20 different municipalities and spilled over into 3 neighboring states. And in the middle of that firestorm, El Mencho vanished. Since then, he stayed a ghost, dodging handcuffs using a terrifying blend of spy networks, bribes, and absolute brutality. The CJNG has spread its tentacles into 28 of Mexico's 32 states. The DEA believes they've locked down supply lines running into the US, Europe, and even Asia. They are the ones largely responsible for drowning American streets in synthetic uppers and lethal, lab-made poisons. In fact, the DEA's National Drug Threat Assessment for 2025 paints the CJNG as one of the most vicious criminal syndicates on the planet, defined by a level of savagery we haven't seen before. And while the Sinaloa cartel is busy ripping itself to shreds in a civil war, El Mencho has seized the moment, marching into turf that used to be untouchable enemy ground. The CJNG isn't just a gang, it's an army. El Mencho drafts former military personnel and cops to drill his hitmen. They're broken down into specialized units, kidnapping crews, cells focused purely on stealing fuel, spy rings that track government ops, and elite shock troops designed for head-on combat. That military-grade discipline has turned them into the single most terrifying force in Mexico. But El Mencho has help. His own flesh and blood, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, better known as El Menchito, spent years as the cartel's number 2. Born stateside in San Francisco back in February 1990, El Menchito reportedly managed the global side of the trafficking business, organized black market fuel sales in Jalisco, and commanded death squads that wiped out anyone brave enough to say no to the cartel. Authorities finally grabbed him in 2015, and he was extradited to the US in 2020. By September 2024, a jury found him guilty of conspiracies involving synthetic stimulants, powder, and illegal weapons charges. Come March 2025, the judge handed down a life sentence. The prosecution didn't hold back, painting him as an incredibly violent figure who spearheaded the CJNG's strategy of using murder, abductions, and torture to construct what they labeled a self-proclaimed empire. Losing El Menchito was the biggest legal hit the cartel has taken yet, but the machine keeps running under El Mencho. He's built a franchise system that lets them expand fast. And unlike the Sinaloa cartel, the CJNG keeps power strictly within the Oseguera bloodline and their in-laws, making for a much more centralized and likely more stable hierarchy. Meanwhile, as Los Chapitos fight for their lives against Los Mayos, they've pulled a move nobody saw coming. They shook hands with the devil, their deadliest rival. In June 2025, Intel confirmed that the CJNG had crossed into Sinaloa to back Los Chapitos in their war against the El Mayo faction. It was a game-changing shift. 2 empires that spent a decade slaughtering each other were suddenly sharing weapons, soldiers, and networks to take control of Sinaloa and wipe out Los Mayos. But the chessboard is crowded with other deadly pieces, forces you can't ignore. Up in northeastern Mexico, spanning Tamaulipas and Nuevo León, lurks one of the most savage groups in history, the Northeast Cartel, the direct descendants of Los Zetas. The Zetas' origin story is completely different from anything else in the Mexican underworld. They didn't start out as traffickers. They started as soldiers. Back in the 90s, Ociel Cardenas Guillen, the boss of the Gulf Cartel, headhunted 30 elite deserters from the Mexican Army's Special Forces Airmobile Group. Their commander was Arturo Guzman de Sena, alias Z1. These guys were highly trained killing machines, versed in counterinsurgency tactics they picked up from American and Israeli advisors. But the man who truly made the name Zetas synonymous with pure terror was Miguel Angel Trevino Morales, or Z40. Unlike the founders, he had no formal military background. He climbed the ladder using absolute sadism. In 2006, he was tied to a gruesome case where 44 victims, all showing signs of severe torture, were discovered across 2 spots in Nuevo Laredo. Hundreds of murders have been laid at his feet. After Heriberto Lazcano, Z3, was neutralized in a Navy raid in October 2012, Trevino seized total control. Under his watch, the syndicate evolved. They didn't just move drugs anymore. They branched into kidnapping, extortion, human trafficking, and fuel theft. The DEA estimated their reach, raking in billions of dollars annually. His brother, Omar Trevino Morales, alias Z42, acted as the money man and administrative head. While Miguel Angel was the iron fist of the operation, Omar washed the profits through tangled webs of dummy corporations, heavily utilizing the American quarter-horse racing industry to hide the cash. The U.S. government put a $5 million price tag on his head. By July 2013, the law caught up with Miguel Angel in Nuevo Laredo, seizing a massive stash of weaponry and $20 million in bills. Omar stepped into the captain's chair until March 2015, when he was taken down at a high-end hideout in San Pedro Garza Garcia, Monterrey. It was a surgical operation. Simultaneously, agents netted Carlos Arturo Jimenez Encinas, the man balancing the books for the Zetas, with both Trevino siblings behind bars. Their nephew, Juan Gerardo Trevino Chavez, known as El Huevo, grabbed the reins, rebranded the syndicate as the Northeast Cartel. He tightened his grip on Nuevo Laredo and pushed aggressively into Nuevo Leon, targeting Monterrey. His enforcers, the infamous Troops from Hell, earned a reputation as one of the most savage death squads in Mexican history. El Huevo's run ended on March 13, 2022. In Nuevo Laredo, Texas prosecutors hit him with 11 counts, ranging from conspiracy to move green loads, white powder, and synthetic chemical batches, to pushing controlled contraband and weaponizing children under 18 for cartel warfare. By November 2024, he admitted guilt, staring down life imprisonment for every single charge. The Trevino brothers, Miguel, Angel, and Omar, were finally shipped to the U.S. in 2024, initially denying the trafficking allegations in March 2025. But by September 2025, they cut a deal with federal prosecutors to take the death penalty off the table. Meanwhile, down in western Mexico, spanning Michoacan, Guerrero, and Mexico State, a new power has surged violently onto the map. The new Michoacan Family. At the helm sit the brothers Johnny and Jose Alfredo Hurtado Olascuaga, known on the streets as El Pez and La Fresa. Johnny, alias El Mojarro, or the Fish, born back in March 1973, is seen as the top boss. He keeps a low profile, known in intel reports simply as a man who loves hunting deer. He stitched this empire together from the wreckage of the old Michoacan family, the Knights Templar, and scattered local gangs. The DEA calculates that the new Michoacan family is responsible for moving, importing, pushing over 36 tons of crystal product, 12 tons of potent poppy derivatives, and 12 tons of cocaine annually across the northern border. They aren't just moving product, they've diversified into illicit mining, stripping the earth of mercury and uranium. In April 2025, the U.S. Treasury slapped heavy sanctions on the cartel and its leadership. The Office of Foreign Assets Control pinpointed 4 core players in the Hurtado clan: Johnny, Jose Alfredo, Ubaldo, who runs the hit squads, and the Mines and their sister, Adida, who allegedly cleans the dirty cash through a chain of used clothing boutiques. For over 10 years, The Hurtado brothers have held a stranglehold on the daily lives and economies of numerous towns. Throughout Guerrero and Mexico State, American authorities have branded the group a terrorist entity, and it stands as a rapidly escalating danger in the heart of Mexico. Yet, you cannot discuss the titans of the trade without bringing up Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, known as the Viceroy, brother to the mythic Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the Lord of the Skies. Vicente inherited the throne of the Juarez cartel after his brother perished in July 1997 during a facial reconstruction surgery gone wrong. Under the Viceroy's watch, Juarez solidified the corridor from Ciudad Juarez to El Paso as the premier gateway for product entering the United States. Intelligence suggests that, through the 90s, up to 70% of the white powder hitting American streets flowed through this specific vein. Vicente forged pacts with Juan José Esparragosa Moreno and the Beltran Leyva clan, keeping many of his brother's old lieutenants in power. For nearly 20 years, he moved in the shadows, far more discreet than his rivals, staying out of the headlines while maintaining a reputation for ruthless brutality. In 2002, he tried to build a super alliance called the Federation, joining forces with Sinaloa and the Beltran Leyvas to stop the infighting over routes. But the truce shattered when his brother Rodolfo ordered the hit on two of El Chapo's men. It sparked a savage war, turning Ciudad Juarez into the murder capital of the world for years. The law finally cornered Vicente Carrillo Fuentes in October 2014 in Torreon, Coahuila. He stood accused of moving massive shipments of illicit product into the states from January 1990 through October 2014. By September 2021, the gavel finally dropped, handing him a 28-year stretch for racketeering and running a criminal empire. Even with the boss in cuffs, the syndicate rose from the ashes as the new Juarez cartel, still grinding along the border, though they are just a shadow of the powerhouse they were in the glory days. Rafael Caro Quintero isn't just a criminal. He is a myth in the underworld. As a founding father of the Guadalajara cartel in the 80s, alongside heavy hitters like Felix Gallardo and Don Neto, he is hailed as one of the architects of the modern trade. But his success painted a target on his back. Authorities raided his land in Procom, the biggest bust the country had ever seen. Over 10,000 tons of crop torched at Rancho El Bufalo went up in smoke in 1984. The man spearheading that charge was DEA agent Kiki Camarena. Quintero wasn't about to let that slide. Seeking blood for his lost fortune, he ordered his men to snatch Camarena and the pilot, Alfredo Zavala Avelar. What followed was a nightmare of brutal torture, ending in their execution in February 1985. That murder woke a sleeping giant. The states went ballistic, launching a manhunt that wouldn't stop for anything. They caught up with Quintero in Costa Rica that April, slapping him with a 40-year sentence. Then came the twist. In August 2013, after sitting in a cell for 28 years, a judge let him walk on a technicality. It was a scandal. He still owed society 12 years on that tab. The release set off a firestorm of international outrage. The Americans never forgave what happened to Kiki, and they demanded his head. For 9 long years, Quintero vanished into the wind, a ghost running things from the rugged peaks of Sinaloa, likely calling the shots for his own crew. But time ran out. On July 15, 2022, at 69 years old, the Marines tracked him down in the brush. The timing was suspicious, coming just 2 days after the Mexican and American presidents met in D.C. to talk security. By cuffing him, Mexico finally paid off one of its oldest, bloodiest debts to the United States. By February 2025, after 4 decades of cat and mouse, Quintero was flown north to face the music. They call him the boss of bosses, the man who wrote the blueprint for the mega syndicates operating today. But if we're talking about pure terror, few cast a shadow like Arturo Beltran Leyva. He went by many names: the Beard, White Boots, Death itself. But the streets knew him best as the boss of bosses. Alongside his brothers Hector, Alfredo, and Carlos, he forged one of the most savage crews in Mexican history. At first, they were thick with El Chapo and Mayo serving as the muscle inside the Sinaloa Federation. They ran the hit squads, securing turf from Guerrero to Sonora. But in 2008, the alliance imploded. The Beltran clan was convinced Chapo had sold out their brother, Alfredo, known as the Owl, handing him to the feds on a silver platter. They hit back hard, assassinating one of Chapo's own sons, Edgar. That sparked a total war with zero rules. Desperate, the Beltran Leyva shook hands with Los Zetas, forming the deadliest kill squad in the game. Then came the end. On December 16, 2009, the Navy got a ping on Arturo's hideout in Cuernavaca. Over 100 Marines and 2 choppers descended on a luxury high-rise. Arturo's bodyguards didn't go quietly. They unleashed a hail of machine gun fire and tossed grenades. It was a bloodbath. When the smoke cleared, Arturo and 3 of his lieutenants were dead on the floor. A 4th shooter, seeing no way out, chose the pavement over handcuffs and leaped to his death from the tower. Arturo's demise shattered the empire. His brother Hector, the one they called the engineer, tried to pick up the pieces. He managed to dodge the law for 5 more years until they cornered him in October 2014 near San Miguel de Allende. There was a massive price on his head, almost $2 million from Mexico, $5 million from the Americans. With Hector in chains, the cartel splintered into warring factions. But the brand of savagery they invented? That didn't die with them. It lives on in the tactics of every ruthless crew operating today. Yet, there is a threat looming even darker than the gunfights, the betrayals, and the bloodshed. It is a silent killer that has claimed tens of thousands of souls up north and is now bleeding into Mexico. We're talking about synthetic chemical compounds, stuff 50 times stronger than the old school product. This poison has become the new gold mine for the cartels. In 2023 alone, these synthetics were linked to nearly 48,000 overdose deaths across the United States. Between 2024 and 2025, while American overdose deaths finally dipped by 37%, the crisis south of the border exploded. Consumption is skyrocketing in Mexico. The Sinaloa Federation and the 4-letter cartel are widely blamed for drowning the U.S. in a tidal wave of synthetic poison. The son of El Mencho was indicted specifically for cooking up these lethal batches and pushing massive volume. The little Chapos are also staring down serious federal charges for moving the product. The economics are terrifying, making the chemicals cost pennies, but the markup is astronomical. With raw ingredients flowing in from Asia, the syndicates churn out pills by the millions. Just 1 kilo of that powder can be cut into hundreds of thousands of doses, with every single one carrying the potential to kill. In a massive crackdown from October 2024 to August 2025, federal forces intercepted 3.5 million fatal tablets, along with over 216 tons of narcotics and nearly 15,000 weapons. They also raided and destroyed 1,262 hidden kitchens used to cook the poison. These clandestine labs are usually tucked away in the press backlands of Sinaloa, Jalisco, Michoacan, and Guerrero. They take over empty farmhouses, remote ranches, and hollowed-out warehouses. The recipe is frighteningly simple, but produces toxic sludge, leaving behind a chemical footprint that poisons the groundwater and soil for local villages. But the cost of this drug war isn't just counted in body bags and missing posters. It is measured in hooked users, broken homes, and whole towns held hostage by terror. The 10 figures in this saga, some buried, some in a cell, others still ghosts, have engineered a humanitarian disaster that is tearing apart both nations. El Mencho is still in the wind, running the show from the dark with a $15 million bounty on his head. The little Chapos and the Mayos are locked in a civil war in Sinaloa, while the Jalisco cartel happily exploits the bloodshed. The new family Michoacana is spreading through the center, while the Northeast faction keeps an iron grip on the border crossings. Even with the old dons locked up or dead, the machine they built keeps humming. Leaner, meaner, and more sophisticated, the new breed of Kingpin learned from the failures of the old guard. They don't want the headlines or the glory. They operate in decentralized cells, use military-grade encryption, and have moved way beyond just pushing powder. Now they own the whole supply chain: avocados, limes, gas theft, illicit mining. They are corporate raiders with heavy weaponry and war chests that rival global conglomerates. This is the cold, hard truth of the trade in Mexico. A conflict that has raged for decades, claimed hundreds of thousands of souls, and has no finish line in sight. As long as the hunger remains up north, and as long as billions of dollars are sitting on the table, someone will always be willing to kill, betray, and climb a mountain of corpses to claim the throne. The names on the org chart change, the alliances shatter and reform. But the business never stops eating, and the bill is footed by the civilians caught in the gears of this endless war. It is the disposable foot soldiers dying before age 25. It is the mothers digging for secret graves. And it is the children who learn the sound of automatic fire before they learn to read.